thankful for her wavy stories. Hold on to the lifetime we won't get back. I know these rivers carry on. People tend to stick to you after time. Places tend to do the same as we do. This river carries on and on.
Hello, and welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and this is our monthly episode with the Kankakee County Museum, where we team up and we put out something interesting about our county's history. And before we get to today's subject, we want to make sure to point out some things that are happening at the Kankakee County Museum currently. Their fall fundraiser for these beautiful potted mums that they get from Benoit greenhouses. That is going on right now, and it's a 9-inch potted mum. They're $12 each. They've got white, pink, red, yellow, purple, and orange. You can place your order by going to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com. Pickup for those will be September 12th. Between 11 and 5. So get a hold of the museum if you want to get your mum in, or your mums, I should say, multiple mums. And also the 100 for History campaign is back, where if you donate $100, you get your name put on the history wall, right?
Yes, it's a wall with plaques with the names of all the donors who have donated 100 for History through several of our different campaigns. It's a nice recognition for a nice gesture.
Absolutely. And if you, let's say you're tight on money, but you still want to donate, there is the $5 club where you can give $5 a month to the Kankakee County Museum. So those are all things that are going on at the museum right now. I don't think I missed anything. Did I miss anything? Was there one? I feel like there was one other thing I was supposed to mention. But regardless, you can always go to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com for any of the things I just mentioned and plan your visit to either the Kankakee County Museum or the French Heritage Museum, which will be open through the fall. That's open every Saturday.
Yes.
The French Heritage Museum is in downtown Kankakee.
Yeah, Indiana and Oak Street.
Yep. So I would like to welcome once again Jorie Walters, the research coordinator for the Kankakee County Museum, and then Jack Klasey, who is also in the research department at the Kankakee County Museum. Welcome to you both. Jack also writes a weekly column in the Daily Journal, always something history related, and the Lifestyle magazine too. I just got the latest issue for that. And another great write-up in there.
I usually do one article for Lifestyles every edition.
And there was a great write-up on Veronica, too,
There was.
the executive director of the museum.
I think that Lifestyles has come along really nicely. That was probably, to my mind, the best, most information-packed and graphically interesting edition they've had since they were started out.
I agree. And I think that magazine has been one of the best ones the Journal has done, because the Journal has done several
through the years
magazines or special things like that over the years, and I think that's one of the best ones.
Yeah, Taylor Ledden runs that, and she just does a terrific job.
She does. So shout out to Taylor of the Daily Journal for doing such a great job on that. So last month we talked about the Riverview Hotel, or Hotel Riverview, in Kankakee, and got a lot of great response from that, by the way. I wanted to let you two know that I think that was one of the listeners' favorite episodes with the Kankakee County Museum so far. So I wanted to let you two know about that. And I remember when we finished recording that episode, Jorie, you were like, all right, next month we're going to talk about Electric Park. You said we have to do that. And it goes in well, because once again, it kind of goes along with that summer theme. We're still in August. People are still doing summer-esque things, recreation. And this also ties once again to Emery Cobb. So I mean, however you guys want to take it away, let's talk about Electric Park.
Well, Electric Park actually was about 13 years before the Riverview Hotel. So it was established before it kind of overlapped with the hotel.
So that would have been
1874,
Okay.
I believe. I got that right?
No, 94, actually. I think according to the notes.
94?
Yeah.
Oh.
It wasn't 74 is before the trolleys.
we were thinking the trolley.
Well, I learn something new every day. I have so many dates in my head.
I can only imagine
that sometimes I do get it wrong.
So 1894.
Right.
Yes. So the location is the current day Beckman Park, and the road that you take, Chicago Avenue?
No, Osborne.
Osborne.
Osborne was where the trolley route came down to the
and
park.
then the one by the river.
Oh, Cobb Park. Cobb Boulevard.
Cobb Boulevard.
Right.
So Cobb Boulevard did not go through all the way to the country club. So at the edge of the trees where the park stops and then the neighborhood goes on, that was the city limits at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that was just people owning land. And so there was the marina, not the marina, today's marina, but that was a beach and a diving area, a swimming area, a canoe area. They had a slide, I believe. They had a slide.
Like a water slide or a regular slide?
I know there was one at Gallagher's Grove, and I think there was also one at
go into
Park.
the beach. So all of that land that's the marina was part of it. So that was all just land. There was no street going through there. And Beckman Park, and we now know, is an open field. They do have the Little League
Park
there. So where the Little League Park was, I believe, is where the roller coaster was.
Right.
So they had a roller coaster, and then they had dance hall. They had a 600-seat auditorium. They had a midway.
Oh, excuse me. I was just going to say it was kind of a modern touch to that auditorium, the theater. It had a retractable roof, kind of like a baseball field. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it was a canvas.
Yes.
That they could pull across and cover the top.
1894 version of a retractable roof.
And then what made this place so special was they had electric lights strung around. So that meant that you can enjoy the park during the daytime and you can enjoy it during the nighttime. So that was something new for the public, something new for the time. Emery Cobb was always good at providing the newest amenities for the period. And so you can enjoy different things in the daytime or nighttime. And I did a walking tour several years ago of the park, and I had pictures, and I kind of walked around the open field there trying to decide approximately maybe where some of the buildings might have stood. It's really hard to tell in the pictures of the different buildings exactly where they were. So I did my best to kind of decide maybe where they were. You could do the midway, which would have games and kind of like the fair. Look, you would go to the midway at the fair. They had cabins you can rent. They had the dining hall. They had
the bandstand. So twice a day, free concerts.
Mm-hmm. They had the Chautauquas there sometimes.
In later years.
What's a Chautauqua?
It's a lengthy kind of educational / inspirational camp meeting. It started out in New York State, in fact, in the town of Chautauqua. But they would bring in speakers, prominent speakers frequently. They would present programs. They had musical programs. And it was just sort of an uplifting educational experience, because this was a day when there was not a lot of public activity. No television, no radio, sort of motion pictures, but there's not a lot of other things. So live entertainment and live activities were very important as far as getting people out to do things, get out of the house and so forth.
So I guess maybe backtracking to before Electric Park came to be, what led up to the building of Electric Park?
Well, Emery Cobb owned a lot of land where the idea of the Riverview area, the Riverview neighborhood, if you think about that in the larger scope, that covers a lot of land. He owned most of that land and then onward towards Aroma Park.
Yeah.
So
South of River Street, all the way from basically Chicago Avenue to Baker Creek on the Aroma Park Road.
And just to give a little synopsis to anyone that hasn't listened to any previous episodes about Emery, he was a Chicago businessman, and he retired to Kankakee.
He did. Mm-hmm.
And that's when he bought up a bunch of land, right?
He did. He was a breeder of shorthorn cattle. He did that business, and he was the founder of Western Union Telegrams. He actually came to just a whole bunch of nothing in the Kankakee Valley and lived by the river and enjoyed retirement. Well, to our benefit, he decided, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
He kept busy in his retirement.
He kept busy.
Yes.
He had land. So that land that he put forth towards the park was kind of in response to Captain Gauger, who had a park, a picnic area downstream a little bit near Aroma Park.
Gauger's Grove.
Mm-hmm. Gauger's Grove.
So Gauger's Grove was in existence first.
Yes, in the late 1880s.
Okay.
And so he did a little bit, and then Emery Cobb built a little more. And Captain Gauger built a little bit more. So it's kind of like a
competition. Yeah.
Who could build the biggest,
for the entertainment dollar?
And I guess where Electric Park was, it would have been east of Hotel Riverview? Is that
yes,
correct?
By about half mile or so, roughly.
About 10 blocks or so.
Yeah, if you go from the idea of where Chicago meets the river, or Cobb Park, and look all the way down to Beckman, that was, I think, roughly about a half mile, maybe a little more than that.
So Emery Cobb sees Captain Gauger doing his thing a little ways down the river near Aroma Park, amusement, amenities, and he's like, I could probably do that, but better.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, since at that point, Electric Park, the reason why it was called Electric Park is because the park was technically owned by Cobb's electric trolley company,
right? The Kankakee Electric Streetcar Company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he thought, I've got this trolley company. I can, the line can go right here, right to this park.
And people from Bourbonnais and Bradley and
south of the river.
And south of the river can get to the park. Yep. And I believe there was a fair...
yes, as far as the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original purpose of building the park was to generate more revenue through the trolley company, because these are kind of tough economic times, the mid-1890s. And so the deal was the trolley fare was a nickel. From anywhere in the area to anywhere in the area. So if you took the trolley to the park, you walked in free. But if you happened to be somewhere else around and just walked up to the gate and wanted in, you had to turn over a nickel to get in.
So really, this was just the park, Electric Park, was really just a way to get people to get on the trolley?
Pretty much. It was one of the many reasons. People took the trolley to work, and they took it downtown for shopping and so forth. But this was one more attraction to get them on the trolley. And it seemed to work. There was a really neat entry there at where the turnaround was. It was a kind of an arch. And you walk, it's kind of like if you ever go to Ravinia, where you walk through the arch into the park up there. This was a park. There's also mentioned the swimming beach and so forth, where
was that inside?
Basically where the harbor is.
Okay.
Well, no, it was a beach right on the river.
Right, but that was outside of Electric Park, right?
No,
it wasn't on the inside.
Well, actually, it was part of Electric Park.
It was,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not fenced off necessarily, I guess, but it was. But there was a changing house there, and there's a kind of interesting story for that. The changing house originally was built for the Hotel Riverview because they had they originally had a kind of a swimming beach there, but I think it didn't prove too popular. So Cobb decided, well, I'll just move it down to Electric Park. And they had an interesting way of getting it there because it was too big to put on a truck, or not truck, or on a wagon. In the wintertime, they slid it on the ice in the river for the half mile or so down to Electric Park.
And that would have been easy because that's back in the day when the river would actually
freeze several feet deep.
Right, several. Nowadays, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that was in the days when there was a major ice harvesting business.
Yes. Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about that on the podcast before, but I love the fact that that's how they moved the changing house.
They also had boat rentals, rowboats, and I would think basically boat rentals. They might have had, there were things that were called naphtha launches, which basically were kind of a small outboard motor kind of thing that ran on, gasoline type material. They also had a couple of other things that don't always turn up. They had tennis courts. They had lawn bowling courts also.
Were bowling alleys a thing at that time?
Lawn bowling, I think, was. I don't think enclosed bowling alleys really developed until toward the end of the 1890s and the early 1900s. Jorie mentioned the dance pavilion, which was, of course, lighted up like everything on there. It was called the Green Lantern.
They had all-night dance contests there.
And, of course, obviously music all the time, the free concerts, and then also in later years, concerts that you paid separately to get. There were a few things that you paid separately once you got in the door, paid your nickel or came on the for example, I think there was a separate charge for the roller coaster.
Yeah,
and that was built a little later. That was built in 1909.
Okay, so that's all over 10 years.
Quite a bit more, yeah. It was a wooden coaster, kind of like some.
We have several photographs of it. If anybody wants any photographs of Electric Park, we have many.
We have lots, yes,
and postcards. So please feel free to contact me or Jack to look at that or any other written information.
That's right.
On it.
Yeah, the roller coaster was built by a bunch of local carpenters using local lumberyard. This is suppliers. We don't know for sure, but we kind of can guess from looking at the pictures that probably the initial drop was about 50 feet. And, of course, it had, rises and dips and sweeping curves around. And there was nothing like it for miles around. Probably the next nearest one might have been in Chicago. So it was quite an attraction.
So were there any other rides besides the roller coaster?
Not that I've ever found. There might have been a merry-go-round or carousel type of thing, but I've never seen any evidence of that.
We haven't seen anything else like that, although it was possible. We just know from the photographs that we have and the information you have, although I keep finding more information that I didn't know about Electric Park along the way, the dining hall. And I just saw an ad the other day when I was putting away material. He brings me a lot of material from like old newspapers, etc., about the dining hall. And you could, I believe, rent the space for a banquet or something.
Banquets or whatever.
Okay.
In the dining hall. I didn't know about the dining hall for a long time. And that sometimes I come across information about something like this, about Electric Park. And I'm like, oh, I did not know this. So I keep adding to the information we have. And so when I talk about it or do some type of lecture about it, I have more notes, more information to share.
Do we know how much it cost to build Electric Park back then? Is there any costs that? Because I suppose that would have been in the records of the trolley business. Right. Would have been in their records. So.
Yeah, and who knows where those are? I don't think I don't think we have any of them.
I don't know, but I do believe it was very popular for many, many years, and they declined. The park kind of declined as I get it over time. And eventually when people began to have their own automobiles and they were dependent on the trolley and then they could go to different places outside the community, I believe that's kind of when the
people
decline.
Started to do traveling of their own outside of the county. with their cars.
That's right. They didn't have to depend on getting the trolley to go somewhere. Actually, probably one of the contributing factors to its decline also was World War I, for a couple of reasons. One, a big part of the crowds that they attracted were young men and their dates. They were off in the army or whatever. And at the same time, during World War I, there were an amazing amount of control economically. Things were rationed. It was hard to get various things. Wages sometimes were cut and so forth because of cost. And so you didn't have the money to spend on frivolous things like going to Electric Park. So it gradually declined over a period, basically probably saying, 19, and that would coincide, the early part of World War I was coincide with the real beginning of automobile ownership.
Yes.
By the time World War I was over, it didn't really rebound. It just sort of spluttered along. During that later period, 1917, 18 through 20 or so.
Was it still in control of the trolley?
I believe it was. I'm not sure when the
time?
other company took over from Cobb, but they would still have continued the business.
Right. And at this point, Cobb was deceased.
Right. He had died from being kicked in his head by a horse.
Yes.
Oh, was that what happened?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
By the early 1920s, probably the major activity there was paid concerts, band concerts, because if you're looking in the old newspapers in that period, there'd be announcements of the so-and-so's band is playing Thursday night or Friday night or all week at Electric Park. And then there were, I think maybe at one point, one of the dance floors might have been converted to a roller rink too, because roller skating was fairly
Was starting to become popular.
By about the mid-1920s, it sort of died a natural death. It just became an abandoned, nobody was operating it. It just sat there deteriorating. So in 1928, the city of Kankakee's Park Board bought it for unpaid taxes. They tore down all of the buildings and eventually developed it into open parkland it didn't have a specific name as far as I can tell, but it was kind of picnic grove. You could come there and picnic and so forth. And I don't know whether the beach might still have been open, but not supervised by anybody. People might still swim there. In 1935, the city decided, and I'm not sure if it was still a city park at that time. At one point, the Kankakee Valley Park District was developed and took over the parks. Originally, they were operated by the city. For example, Alpena Park was one that was operated by the city for many years. Anyway, in 1935, whoever was controlling the parks in those days decided to name the park for Frank Waterman, who was the operating head of the Waterman Pen Company in New York, which was a very large and very big operation. I mean,
and he was on Jeopardy question.
Oh, that's
Jeopardy question the other day. I got it right.
Frank Waterman?
Frank
Really?
Waterman, yes, the pen.
So did he have any ties to Kankakee?
He was born in Altorf and grew up in Kankakee and eventually moved into his uncle, I think, was the person who really developed the Waterman Pen Company, but then Frank moved into the ownership when the uncle died. A lot of people are familiar with what I call the Mystery Monument. When you go down Cobb Boulevard in Beckman Park, there is about a 6-foot tall, I don't know what you would call it, I guess maybe monument, made of big rocks, bowling ball-sized rocks that are all cemented together, and there's a blank rectangle on the front of it facing Cobb Boulevard. And people say, what's that? What is that? What's that been there forever? Well, it turned out, and I don't know whatever happened to the plaque, but at the time that the park was named for Waterman, there was a bronze plaque with 2 paragraphs of information about Frank Waterman and why the park was named for him and that sort of thing. It disappeared somewhere along the line. We do have photographs of it. But when the park was officially dedicated in 1935, they had a big to-do.
Ceremony, yes.
Big event, a ceremony.
Did he make a big contribution to the city or something?
No, they were hoping he would, I have the feeling.
To me, it seems random. I don't know. I mean, I get he grew up in Kankakee and then he took over this ginormous company, but I don't know. It was just
Yeah, I think, and I don't know, we never have any hard fact there, but there seemed to be kind of a feeling that the reason they did this was they were figuring, okay, good, we're going to name this park for him, and he's going to come up with some big bucks to develop the place and this sort of thing.
Gosh,
So
that's
they
funny.
had, they had the ceremonies. They even had a big barbecue and fed people and this sort of thing. They spent a day touring him around the county and back to the points where he, had grown up
It
and
was
so
just a
forth.
way of milking him, right?
Yeah. As far as we could tell, the only thing he gave the city was he sent them 2 kind of rare black swans that had been in the waterway in his house, his Palm Beach, Florida residence. That was the only thing. And I guess they swam around the river for a while, and who knows what happened to them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also very strange.
Yes. Anyway, it remained Waterman Park from 35 until 1956, when the city decided to rename it for somebody more recognizable to more current people, I guess.
So like, oh, well, that didn't work
Yeah.
out the way it was supposed to.
Yes. So it was named for Louis Beckman, who had been the mayor of Kankakee and was very prominent in lots of things in town. And it's therefore there's what it remains as.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I could be completely wrong. Beckman, didn't one of the Radickeys marry a Beckman,
I
right?
suspect
From
so,
Radicke
yeah.
Brewery, right?
I think so.
Isn't that
Yeah.
there was a tie
Yeah.
Yeah,
between the Beckmans
the
and
German
the Radickeys?
community here was very close knit. They most of the families had come here about the same time in the 1870s, 80s, and so forth, emigrating from Germany. And yeah, you had the Radickes and the Beckmans, and oh my.
I just swore when we did the Radicke
Yeah,
Brewery
yeah.
episode, you mentioned a marriage between a Radicke
And
and
a Beckman. I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
The prominent families back in the day married into each other's
That's right.
families.
Right.
So you always find somebody is related to somebody else through marriage, but they also had many children.
Right, big
back in the
families.
day, big
Yes.
families, and married off into prominent
Yeah.
other families.
So when was Beckman Louis, you said, right? Louis Beckman.
Louis
When was he mayor of Kankakee?
Oh boy, I think in late 40s, or I know. Let's see. When I came here in '63, he was at least several mayors back from there. So I think, maybe in the 40s and early 50s. See, like many of the mayors in Kankakee, served a number of terms.
Is there anything that you can think of, one of his accomplishments or things that happened while he was in office in the city?
The Beckmans were property developers. They developed a number of subdivisions. In fact, I think it's possible that the area where we're sitting right now might have been a Beckman development, the West Meadowview or East, I guess, that sort of area. I can't think of any. He was, let's see, trying to think who was mayor when the Washington Avenue Bridge was built, when there was a big to-do in 1904. But I think that was before Beckman, but I'm not sure.
Thinking about Electric Park, it had so many things,
It did.
so many different amenities. As far as entertainment goes, was there anyone of prominence that ever performed there that we know of?
Not that I know of.
Is there anything on record of that?
The only thing I can think of is a Chautauqua where I think the
Helen Keller, I believe, was
Yeah,
Helen Keller.
one of them.
Chautauquas.
Wow.
And I think the Women's Temperance Union
Oh, yes,
lady,
yes.
tip of my tongue.
The founder. Although
Yeah.
she was much earlier though. She was 1853.
Yeah.
52 when she taught here.
Just-
Gone blank.
Yeah.
But the founder of the Women's Christian Temperance Union taught in Kankakee for one semester in the very early days, and then went north to Evanston. I can't think of her name. They had a fountain erected in her name
Yes.
down on the courts
I'm
at the
thinking
corner of Court and Indiana.
somebody in that area spoke at a Chautauqua. I'm thinking. I could be wrong. So the Electric Park, Beckman Park, if you go there today, you'll just see a wide open field. And you see, like I said, the road going through and then the marina. And you think of it as a separate area. The marina's over here. There's a road going through, a big park, just open area, and then the Little League place. But that was all one one area. And
And there's no clue anywhere that it was once Electric Park, right?
No.
There's no remnants of any kind.
Nothing.
No, there's nothing that resembles it. So that's one reason why I wanted to do a walking tour there.
Yes.
And with my big sign, I enlarged pictures. Actually, Jack did it for me. Enlarged some pictures, and I put them actually on a stick, and I held them up so that, because I'm short, so people could see, and just kind of walked around and tried to get an idea of maybe where some of the buildings were, just a guesstimation of things. It is really hard to tell in the photographs because there's just woods. Just trees.
Yeah.
Right, lots of trees.
Lots of trees, mostly to the west end of that area where the cabins were among the trees and so forth.
But the theater looks like spaceship. To me, it just looks like a building from outer space.
So it was round.
Yeah, it was pretty round.
Pretty much round or octagonal. Yeah. And had this canvas cover that could be pulled across.
So was it a Shakespearean style theater?
Hard to tell. It might have been similar to that, with just
how it's you got a round
theater in the round with the stage at one that's wrapped around three sides of it.
Right.
It looks like it we don't have any interior pictures, but looking at it from the outside, it looks like it probably would have had kind of a globe theater kind of.
Okay.
And then I also read that they added another 100 seats to make it, I believe, 700. They added up, and then you could have plays there, musical entertainment. You can go during the day, you can go during the evening. I would say you could go to Electric Park and never do the same thing twice. The parents would do one thing, the kids would go do something else, but there was always enough to keep you interested and to keep you busy. I would imagine they would have had a variety of different things on the midway, different people coming in, maybe different games, different variety over time to keep people interested and keep people busy. And then you had your choice of a daytime family event or an evening date night event during the warmer weather.
Yes. Right. Because when it was cold, what did they do? Ice skating?
They pretty much shut down as far as the park was concerned. People would use the changing house as a warming house or a place to put their skates on and that sort of thing. But there was no connection at that point or no entry fee or anything. People just skated in that area.
And I do believe Gauger had his boat stopped there, I believe, too.
Yeah.
You can get on one of his boats at Riverview Hotel or
downtown at what's now the Schuyler Avenue Bridge.
Or Electric Park, and you can go down. Now, boating was a huge entertainment factor. We have a lot of photographs and a lot of postcards of people boating in canoes and on the big paddle boats, rowboats, fishing, standing, they do that now sometimes. This time of year, I'll get people going into the middle of the river when the river looks like a creek,
Oh, yes.
And they'll pull out items and bring them to me. Can you identify this? From what I can see, they had the same idea back then of standing in the river or, with their fishing poles or just swimming.
You can still see that today below the dam. When I went across Washington Avenue Bridge the other day, there was somebody down below the dam.
Yes,
up to here and up to his waist in water with waders on.
Yeah.
Oh, you're mentioning picking up new information. It's funny. I do a lot of research in old newspapers, obviously, and little bits and pieces turn up. And strangely, there's often be a column of sort of odds and ends, and so there'll be a paragraph saying, "Oh, Electric Park has added 100 more seats to the theater." And that's all there is to it. And if you don't happen to you have your eye run across that,
you wouldn't have known.
Yeah, and when we do it, that turns up more information about this or about that.
Anything else on Electric Park that you want to put out there?
I believe it was a huge summertime, I would say, event, but something that people look forward to going to.
This was a tradition.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Just like the fair, I think.
Right.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Only they could do it more often.
Right. It was open all summer.
Speaking of fair, I want to, next time we have this, I want to do the interstate fair.
Okay.
yes, that's a good idea.
Because that will actually kind of wrap up the summer.
The summer, yeah.
Mhm.
And since the Kankakee County Fair just happened,
Mhm.
so
The interstate fair ran for a long time as well. And that was in a location that is all woods now. And you
Yes.
would never know
no.
what
Just-
was there.
The only thing that's left you would know is that's Old Fair Park.
That's
Is what it's
exactly.
called now. So that's your indication.
Yeah,
a
if
fair,
you go
yes.
down Brookmont Boulevard
Mhm.
and you see woods on either side of it, you would never know that was part of the interstate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to get into that. That'd be good.
So we'll wrap that up.
Awesome.
We'll wrap up the summer next
Well,
time with
okay.
the interstate fair.
Oh,
Before we
sounds
run
good
out
to
of
me.
summer.
Yeah, right. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Well, Jorie Walters, Jack Klasey from the Kankakee County Museum, thank you both so much to
You're
both of you for
welcome.
being on. It's always
It's
a pleasure.
And again, to anyone listening, anybody who would like information, please contact us and we're happy to provide information and or photographs.
Yes.
Yes.
for 'em.
Always go to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com. There's Instagram and Facebook. Both of those are at Kankakee County Museum. As I mentioned, the Mums Fall fundraiser going on right now. It's only $12 for each mum. That helps keep the lights on at the museum. But there's also the 100 for History as well, or the $5 club if you want to make a contribution.
100
So-
for History is, we hope, a fundraiser to help defray some of the maintenance and operating costs. We've got a building that was built in 1948 originally, and a lot of additions put on through the years. So there's always something breaking down. We need a new furnace for this, or we're currently surveying the situation with our roof.
Yes.
And that may be something that's major in the nearby future. So we're trying to hedge against that to raise some funds to stand by. We're not a tax-supported institution. We get a minor amount of tax that is levied through the Park District that helps to pay some of our personnel costs, but the rest of it is all donations and bequests from people and so forth. So we can always use money.
Yeah, and not to mention the small home and the Taylor.
It's Taylor Schoolhouse, yes.
Those are both old buildings, and then the French Heritage Museum is one of the oldest, or if not the oldest building.
It's the oldest building in downtown Kankakee.
Yeah, so the older the building, usually the more maintenance it
Yes.
requires.
Yes, indeed.
So, and that is always a high cost. So any contribution of any kind is truly appreciated. So yeah, those costs never seem to get lower, do they?
No, and just like every homeowner, we've got a light bill, and we've got a water bill, and we
Yes.
have a gas bill.
Yes, and I'm glad you did point out that you are not, you're not funded through people's tax dollars, So it's important to point out. So yeah, any contribution is welcome. So
Yes, and we appreciate you plugging it for us.
absolutely, that's what I'm here for. So thank you to you both again.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Well, that concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this podcast with a family member, friend, or neighbor that you think might enjoy learning new things about the people and places of Kankakee County. Also, a special thank you to our patrons for helping make this episode possible, including Karen Bishop, James Reardon, Jake Lee, Jesse Arsenal, Dave Barron, Daryl Damper, Samantha Rocknowski, Blake Iverson, Travis Garcia, Jane Bostwick, Dawn Harrison, Simon Topless, Scott Wright, Carrie O'Connell, Jamie Race, Joanne Barry, Anthony Vicelli, Eric Olson, Jeff and Rosa Carroll, Teague Dreenan, Sandy and Steve Twait, and Rose Lucky. To become a podcast patron, go to KankakeePodcast.com and then just click on the Patron tab. If you pledge $5 or more per month, you'll also hear your name announced on an episode. There's also other rewards like early access to new episodes, unedited versions of episodes, even video versions of select episodes, podcast merch, discounts on special events, and so much more. Your monthly pledge is truly appreciated. Our monthly goal right now is to reach $400 per month. And right now, we're about 37% away from reaching that goal. So please sign up for the patron program today at KankakeePodcast.com. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll. Talk to you soon.